I am your host of Across Generations, Tiffany D. Cross, and this is the only place where you will hear three different perspectives from three distinct generations of Black women, and I'm so thrilled to invite you to this conversation. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Across Generations, and today we are talking about something that really impacts all of you, whether you're a mother or not. We are talking about defining motherhood. And I want to start with a very personal story. Do you want to be a mother? Because if so, you have about 6 months to get pregnant, and then we'll have to take your uterus. Now, those were the words the very compassionate Black woman doctor said to me a few months after I turned 40. Now, in my 20s and my 30s, I was filled with this desire to want to be a mother. I envisioned myself this modern-day Claire Huxtable, seamlessly juggling my career and my home life. And so many decisions I made centered a future with children. Who I dated, where I bought my house, career choices I made. And then all of a sudden, when faced with this decision, I remember thinking, do I really want to be dealing with car seats and play dates in my 40s, or parent-teacher conferences in my 50s, or a hormonal teenager when I'm going through menopause? It just really didn't suit my life. But motherhood has been such a defining characteristic of who I am as a person. So I can really only approach conversations about motherhood as a child. Now, obviously not as a child as an adolescence, but as in I am someone's child. And so for those who choose not to have kids, we sometimes maneuver in a world where women are defined by their childbearing desires and abilities. And I have to say, being middle-aged with very few regrets, I do find myself wondering, does something happen biologically? Do you change your sense of self when you have kids? And when you have no kids and you lose your parents, I think, how does the trunk of the tree survive without roots or branches? And if we're childless, do we still become matriarchs in the community as we grow old? And if you're young and you don't want kids, how likely are you to change your mind when faced with your own mortality? So let's get into this conversation. I'm so thrilled to be joined by these beautiful women to have this conversation with me. We have joining us Mandii B. She is 33 years old. She's a media personality, a podcaster, and a force, which you will obviously see as we get into this conversation. Thank you for being here, Mandii.
Thank you.
And we also have the beautiful Mrs. Tate. Mrs. Tate is 81 years old and a mother of two, and she has very strong thoughts about the beauty and bruises of motherhood. Mrs. Tate, I'm so honored that you're with us today.
Thank you.
I want to start this.
Be here.
Thank you. Thank you. We are so honored to have you. I want to start this conversation with you because you speak about motherhood so beautifully, raising two daughters. And so I'm just curious, you've given us the impression that motherhood was something you always desired. Where did that desire come from?
I think always in the sense, because when I had my first child, I was 19 when she was born. But I think because my mother left us, my brother and I, when I was about 10 or 11, and I could see my best friend, her family, the mother and the father and the whole bit, and it was like just a beautiful, beautiful family. And I said, I'm going to have that one day. And I always remember that picture in my mind.
Your mother left?
Yes.
So I maybe in that absence, you wanted to fill that void to become a mother?
No, I don't know if that's it or not, because I'm not a psychologist.
Yes.
But I saw what a loving home looks like.
Yeah.
And my dad was the best father. He took care of my brother and I. He raised us, and he started his own business and everything. But I was more or less became the mother of the house to my younger brother. But I think I just wanted to always have this loving family, like my girlfriend's family. I used to spend so much time at their home, and that was my model for how I wanted my family to be.
I get that. That. I'm coming to you, Mandii, because I hear you over here laughing.
No, I love this.
It's beautiful. But I will say, in hearing her say, like, your mother left when you were young, I relate to that because I had a tumultuous childhood. I had my mother's sober today, but there was addiction in my house. And so in my 20s and 30s, I wanted to be a mother to heal those childhood wounds and therapy and book reading took that desire away. But also like medical issues, having
Right.
to have like fibroid issues, having to have a hysterectomy. You are younger than me, and you are resolute. Ain't no kids for me.
No kids. It's crazy because hearing you talk about seeing that loving family from your friend's household, I grew up in a single parent household and it seemed just like struggle. Honestly, my mom worked multiple jobs to provide. I'm the oldest of three. We were a house full of girls. And honestly, knowing how hard my mom worked, it just seemed like, dang, I actually want to live for myself. I want to be able to do the things I want to do. I remember even the amount of rooms we had, right, in our house had to be more because she had to provide for us. Buying the food, the types of cars she drove, I really felt like she lived a life for us and she didn't live a life for herself. And so as soon as I could get out the house, I got out the house. And maybe it's a bit of selfishness. I wanted to be able to do all the things I wanted to do without the care of someone else first.
Yeah, I get that.
And I think that that's kind of still where I am. I feel like my businesses can be my kids. That's my legacy. But I really am 10 toes down that kids are not for me and won't ever be. And that's definitely the conversation now in dating as well.
Yeah, I bet.
Ugh.
But because at 33, can you imagine when you're older and when you start having health issues, when, you're not dating as
I'm
much?
going to pay for a nurse, for a doctor. I don't know if I would actually think that, and I know your kids are supposed to be who takes care of you when you get older, right? To me, you're still going to hire someone to help take care of me, right? Again, I still feel like I've always had to provide and fend for myself. Even I started working at 14 years old, was helping my mom with my sisters. So I've always felt like I got me. I don't know if I, thought that my kids would have to have me, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely understand that. Mrs. Tate, I'm struck by you've known your entire life that you wanted to be a mother. So I hear Mandi's point because I remember that struggle too, girl. My mother, my mother juggled the struggle. So shout out to her for loving me so much to do that. With you, what was the most challenging part of motherhood? Because that's a real thing with, finances, and not always waking up being enthusiastic about mothering these two girls. What was the most challenging part for you?
I think I would basically say all aspects of motherhood were challenging to me because being so very young, even my firstborn, it's like the idea of bathing her when we came home from the hospital. I never did anything like that. And I didn't have a mother there to help me. I was in Washington, D.C., my husband and I, and now I had this baby. So everything was a challenge. The hospital sent a woman over just to go through the, basic things and so forth and so on. But I'm so highly motivated. And I always knew before I had my daughter, the first time I felt her move in my body, I said, I know what my purpose in life is. Wow. I said, I have to be the best person I possibly can because I'm responsible for raising another human being. It hit me like a ton of bricks. So to me, it's always been trying to learn because you don't have a lot of role models in terms of your parents say, do what I say, not what I do,
right, exactly.
and that kind of thing. And I said, that doesn't really work. So a lot of decisions I had to make was based on logic because I tend to be a very logical person. And I think that's what led me to being a computer programmer way back in the 60s.
Yeah.
But that's when my daughter came here, that was it for me. It's so much love and responsibility at the same time. So they kind of balance each other.
Right.
You're not afraid. You're just afraid of doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But even with a child, there's no such thing as the wrong thing if you love them because you're loving them and you just love them. And you get so much back in return.
I hear that so much. That's the biological part of it. As soon as you felt your daughter move.
Yeah.
This is a sensitive thing. Don't hate me at home, okay? I'm saying something that's sensitive. But I had a friend miscarry very early on in her pregnancy, and she's a close friend. So I felt comfortable asking her this question because it hit her heart. She was really sad. And she may have been like in the first 2 months. And I asked her, with all love and respect and kindness that we have as Black women in our sisterhood, why do you think this struck you so hard? Because, you weren't that far along. And she said something to me that really changed my perspective. She said, Tiffany, once you feel life inside you, you will never want to part with it. So I was struck by what you said, that you felt it immediately. Yes. It was biological, something you could even control. It was something you felt inside.
Yes, when the first time she moved, because other than that, I mean, I always want to have a happy family and a loving family. But I also, when I went to college, I love French. I took French in high school. I took French in college, and I said, when I get out of college, I think I'm going to go to France and live for about 6 months so I really get this language down pat. It never happened. Of course, later in my life, I still went to Alliance Francaise in Manhattan to keep up with it, and then began to travel when my daughters got older and stuff. But so you do have other things that you want to do. But back then, abortion was not an option for me because it wasn't even legal.
So I was actually going to bring up that. Yeah. So
exactly. So it's a different situation.
Yeah.
You said though, like how you like the connection of it. That was not my experience. So I got an abortion when I was 16 years old. Mm-hmm. And my mom, before having me, also had multiple abortions. And so this was actually a conversation that we had to have because I did have the ultrasound. I was able to look and see that there was life inside of me.
Yes.
And what's crazy is there was zero connection.
Wow.
I was 16 years old. I was ready to be on the volleyball team. My mom let me know how she felt after the abortions that she had. And she was like, I want you to know this is going to be a decision that you will live with for the rest of your life. And when I tell you, I didn't feel a thing. It's nothing I regret. It was a moment in time. I don't even think I go back to that moment. And it's like, what if? I wish I would have, woulda, shoulda. I know that abortions normally come with so much regret. I had none. And that was actually a thing. My mom sat me. We looked at the ultrasound together, and she asked me my feelings and if there was any regret, and there was none. So it's so interesting to hear the connection that mothers do have with their excitement, especially, and I don't want to, trigger anyone listening either, because I know there's so many people that wish they had that experience. And I did. I went forward with the abortion and have never looked back. Haven't had another one since. Knock on wood somewhere. But I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But at that moment, no, there actually was no excitement or connection that I felt in that moment of being pregnant.
Well,
so it's interesting.
Thank you for sharing that story. And I do just want to say people have a lot of opinions about abortions. Please stay out of our uterus.
Listen, I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-choice all day.
Exactly. Okay. However you feel about it. If you don't want an abortion, don't have one.
I'm also pro-choice.
That's it's so interesting though, knowing that it wasn't even legal. It was never an option.
Yeah. It was never an option.
Wow.
Well, I never had an abortion in life. I never have been pregnant, so I don't know what that feels like. But I do remember with my fibroids issue, I literally told the doctor, we can do this today. Like I'm ready. And she made me wait 2 weeks. She said, no, I want you to talk to everybody, who's a mother. I did. And like you, I just didn't feel like I was in my 40s, and it was like that time had passed. But hearing you say that you have no regrets, I do wonder if you change your mind, and we know that you're saying you will never, but if you change your mind, I wonder, will it be different for you?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think it's also interesting, like just the pressures and the way people constantly ask me again, right? They'll be like, oh, how old are you? Oh, you'll change your mind.
Yeah.
If you go to a doctor's office as well and say, hey, I want my tubes tied. Hey, I want a certain, birth control. they will literally be like, but are you sure? You know,
Mhm.
being a mom there's just always this pressure of my existence being dependent on if I have children. And I think maybe I'm just a rebel and actually really hate that that's where my value is placed in the world. But I don't want kids. And I actually hate too that when you go to the hospital, you're questioned, is this really the decision you want to make?
Right.
You sure you don't want to be a mom? You'll
Yeah.
change your mind one day. I hate it.
Well, I want to talk about that, like our value being defined by bearing children. You were a mother of two.
Yes.
You had a vibrant career. You were a computer programmer, and you still made sure that your children were the center of your world.
Well, that's because, even you could be the best mother in the world, but your friends and family are there to cushion you. Like when I became a programmer, I had my daughters at that time, they were about 3, 4 years old. And I hadn't gotten my degree from Howard University because once I became pregnant, that was it.
Right.
So I said, I need to make a living so I'll always be able to support at least my 2 girls. So I was hearing about computers and this, that, and the other. So I said, I think I'm going to be a computer programmer because the
Good for you.
salaries are great and everything. And they weren't teaching it in college, but in New York City on 59th Street, there was the Albert Merrill Institute. So I paid to go there for like 10 months. I was working during the day, and in the evening, I went Monday through Thursday for about 10 months until I got that degree. But meanwhile, it was my older cousin that took care of my daughters during the week so that I could work and go to school at night. So
Wow.
she did that for me. And she for almost a year she did that.
It takes
so
a
that
village.
I was about to say it takes a village.
Right.
It takes a village. It
But
really does.
A village is not always available to everybody, though. That's the other thing. And the truth is, it takes a village. But at 3 a.m, when that child is colicky and crying, and the other one ate something and is puking all over, ain't no village. It's just mama at that point. And when babies
Yes.
fall, they rarely say daddy. They usually say mama.
Yeah.
I need mama.
Well, I was helped during those years.
Yeah.
When they were little, I was with them all the time. I didn't even venture out to go get a job until they were like 3 or 4 years old.
Something
So,
people ask a lot. I mean, this is to Mandy's point, that it comes with judgment, oh, you'll change your mind. Are you sure
Mhm.
this is what you want to do? We rarely ask that question in the inverse. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Tate. We know you are an amazing mom and you love your girls. Was there ever a moment in your life where you regret having kids?
never.
Never.
And there were a lot of, I don't know if you would call it sacrifices, but I clearly know there were times that I would have made a different decision if I didn't have daughters to
Mhm.
do something. And I've never, ever regretted anything because they are worth everything to me. They really are. But I'm not here to fight for motherhood. That's how it is for me.
Mhm.
And I also can say, like Mandii, I have a lot of Mandies around me too. Like my girlfriends, almost half of my girlfriends never had any children.
Same.
Really?
And they have done so many amazing things for me and my daughters. Stories that I found out when they were grown that my girlfriends took care, that they went to get things straightened out. So they were also, my girlfriends, whether they have kids or not, have also been the great mothers to my daughters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, so during my teenagers, that was probably the hardest part for me. I left home when I was 16.
Oof.
And yeah, I became a woman long before I was ready to.
Yeah.
It's something about it when you are out in the world on your own with no safety net and you have to feed yourself, provide for yourself, get roof and, shelter and food. It separates the women from the girls, as they say. And so going through that time period, that was the time I wanted to be a mother the most.
Wow.
What I realized, though, is I was mothering myself. That was the real craving. And so as I went through life, and I was running from something. I didn't really know what I was running towards, but I was running away from something. And when I found that peace within myself, it changed so much about how I felt about motherhood. I was no longer trying to heal those childhood wounds. I wasn't looking to have a child to correct all the wrongs that I thought my mother had. And so I bring that up to say, I hear you talk about how challenging motherhood was for you. My mother and I, it's a struggle. We're fine now.
We're fine as adults now. Growing up, it's a thing. I get you.
And I think I will project that I think my mother hears me. All the things you went through, all the sacrifice. My mother made sacrifice. And I think she hears me today and she feels like, you have never birthed a child. You have never raised a child. And you have the temerity to come to me today and question my motherhood through the lens of 2023 when it was a whole different world in 1979. You have the audacity to have judgment for me. My mother was 19 when she got pregnant with me. And you have the audacity to question what I did as a mother when you have no idea how hard it was. And that's something that I've really tried to struggle with because I think
Can I ask you what you questioned in hers? Because to me, in my 20s and 30s, I just kept saying, I'm sorry.
Wow.
Because I knew how hard it was. When I had to buy my first couch, I said, oh, now I understand why my mama ain't want to sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
When I would come home from work when she would come home from work and all she wanted was the chicken taken out or the dishes done.
Mm-hmm.
I literally having to work and really recognizing how hard it was for me or how I felt when I came home to a mess.
Yeah.
I literally apologized to my mom. I said, I did not know how hard you probably were raising us, trying to do everything, right?
Yeah.
And also asking for the most simple of things that we didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
So all I did was apologize to my mom. So what did you question to her?
My mother's going to be playing this clip for me for the rest of at every holiday dinner. Mandii has just become my mother's favorite daughter. So I questioned everything about my mother because I only saw her as a mother. I did not see her as a woman. And so I questioned my mother's dating. I questioned her drinking. She was dealing with her own trauma, you know, and I did not have the tools to have compassion for what she was going through. I questioned decisions that she made that served her, that didn't serve me. She had a right to make those decisions. She moved us. I had to live in places I didn't want to live. When she would go out with men, I ain't like it. I felt like, well, I don't ever see Claire Huxtable doing anything like that, and all of those things that she was just being a young woman, it was her right to do that. And to your point, like if you come home and the dishes aren't done, the house isn't clean. My mother was a yeller. Like she was stressed out trying to provide for these 2 kids and she would start cursing and yelling, but it made me, so traumatized.
Understood.
All of it just made me so uncomfortable. And so I like repeatedly, and it's not always like a question like, Mom, why did you do that? It comes across as judgment,
right? Right.
I am judging her, and I can understand how she feels. Like I'm 44 years old, and I can understand how my mother looks at me like, little girl, please miss me with all of that. So we've gotten better, but even well into my 20s and 30s. I'm curious, have your daughters ever come to you? And said, like,
since you mentioned something like that, I clearly remember when I started working in the computer down all the way on Wall Street. And I clearly remember a lot of times I would get home, I'd be very tired. But I always cooked. On Sunday, I cooked enough food to last almost the whole week. Because Friday was when I would drive them up to White Plains to go to McDonald's on Friday, which we always look forward to. But sometimes you come home, you're like stressed a little from work. And I clearly remember coming into the house and Janine Deidre, the babysitter, was leaving. And then they just wanted to just come and do whatever. And I was constantly yelling at them, give me a break and everything. And then I remember looking at the 2 of them, looking at me one time, and with this look, and I felt like they looked like, I said, my God, I must look like an animal to them because these 2 little girls, I'm looking at them yelling and telling the way, these are my daughters. I said, from now on, when I come home, when I come in the house, just give me a couple of minutes and then we go forget it. But I always wanted to clean up or do stuff like that. So what I did, I hired, because of my job, I was able to hire a cleaning lady to clean the house. Yes. I still did the cooking because can you imagine being a little child and somebody big and tall is yelling down at you? That's not a good look.
Right.
At all.
That's not a good look at all.
Exactly. At all.
And sometimes, even though you didn't read about this, you have to take for an example the bad things that went on in your life and say, I'm not going to do that, because most people look for good behavior to model. You could also look for bad behavior and then do the exact opposite.
Yep.
And that's what I've done, trial and error, throughout the whole time raising my daughters.
Yeah. But what I hear in that story, thank you for sharing that, because your girls benefit from that.
Yes.
And you made them whole, self-full adults. It takes means. Because what you talked about, like my mom had to do all this and get food on the table and spend money on stuff. It takes means. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the wealth gap in this country between Black folks and everybody else, really. I'd be remiss if I didn't think about all the women who are living under the poverty line, raising children by themselves and making magic happen every day. So there are going to be missteps sometimes in motherhood. So this is a perfect segue to shift to a segment, The Streets Are Talking. My friend Gabrielle Union had some thoughts about a fear of potentially being a bad mom. So I'm going to play that and we can talk about it on the other side.
How has your bond with Kavya evolved over time, including what you saw from her eyes on the trip?
I think I was afraid of being a bad mom, of just not living up to the great moms that I grew up with. I was afraid. Like, I didn't want my lack of, understanding or knowledge on every single thing to have this, leave this gaping hole in her life. And so I was probably more timid initially when she was very young. And then as I got more confidence, I'm like, oh, we're all winging it? Yeah, carry the one. Yeah, we're all winging it. We're just doing the best I can. We're just doing the best we can. And in Africa, I had 2 weeks of just time with her. I don't get just 2 weeks of time with anybody, not even myself, really. So it was beautiful, and it gave me even more confidence to trust that maybe I'm solid at this, and I'm raising happy, healthy, free Black girls. And it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life.
So that's a real legitimate fear.
And I can relate to that too.
Yeah.
And I remember Janine and Deidre have so many girlfriends as they grow older. Like, I have 2 daughters, but I really have about 20 other daughters.
You got 21 and 22 right here.
I'm happy to have you. The more the merrier. But one of their friends, we were in the kitchen. I was cooking for everybody. And she asked me, Sandy, she said, can you give me some advice on motherhood? Because she has 2 children that she was having problems with. And I'm not going to mention her name, but I said, I called her by, I just stopped what I was doing. And I looked at her and I said, I'm not a professional at this, but one thing I know for sure, however you want your children to grow up to be, baseline, you need to be that way too. So that's the starting point. Okay, it's not, you have to set an example for them and show them direction. Everything else from it can be very creative in terms of who you are as an individual and so forth and so on. But you have got to be the role model for them. So if you want your children to be honest or this, that, and the other, you need to be that way also.
I mean, I think, though, that's the fear, right? I think some people know that maybe they have a lot of work to do. Maybe they know that they're not the nicest of people, or that they're dealing with their own trauma and demons. And I know that my mom battled with that, right? Raising women at that, how we show up, not only in our friendships, but very much at work. I feel like I got more of a lesson on really being a hard worker than being a good person, juggling jobs and balancing that than really being intimate. I think I've had an issue with intimacy because that's actually not what I was shown. But I was shown a hardworking woman because that's all my mom really knew how to give. She was on her own since she was 16. She left the house at 16, right? And so I'll be honest, I've had a lot of friends now in their late 30s, early 40s, where they know that they're going against the biological clock. And they're like, I'm still trying to figure out myself. I don't even think I want to be a mom anymore. I couldn't imagine having to be now a role of a whole nother being. You're now a mom. That's another title, right? We now have our titles in our jobs.
Yeah.
We have our titles with our friends, with our lovers. To add that title, I think, is very stressful.
Yeah.
The idea of literally raising and being responsible, it's another responsibility. It's another task. I'm a millennial. It's another bill.
Yeah.
Oh my God, with inflation, like the ideas, and it's just like the fear of, how do I add one more thing to my plate? That's the fear now. And then again, being a good person. Let me make sure I don't raise a serial killer. Let me make sure, you know what I mean? You really gotta be thoughtful in knowing that you're responsible for bringing this person into the world.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I'll get on the highest of mountains. I will ride whatever roller coaster. I already know the fear of me raising a child is another reason why I'm good. I would feel like I was out of control.
Yeah.
In terms of, I don't have the control of how that person realistically will be in society.
I completely respect that. I'm only asking this question for conversational purposes.
Go
I'm
ahead.
not trying to change anybody's mind because I made my decision. But I am curious. Let's say you meet the love of your life.
Yes.
You find intimacy. You are showing parts of yourself to this man you ain't never showed before. And he says, baby, I want a walking, talking, living, breathing expression of our love. I want us to have a child. You say what?
You haven't listened to me. I think that it's very important now at 33 to really know what I want. And so therefore, if I'm dating, I'm not going to change a guy's mind on the things that they're set in. There's a lot of men who have had enough kids and do not want any more. And will be adamant that they do not want any more. And so to me, knowing that I have these fears of how I would show up, and men, they would want the mother of their children to be a good mother, right? When we're talking about the fear of being a bad parent.
Yeah.
I just don't know if that's a role that I'm ready for. And so I would tell him, you have not listened to me. And maybe this is not where you should be then, because I would want you to be somewhere that you get all the things out of life that you want as well. And I think that would be like my foot down. And that's a conversation I'm now having very early. In your 30s as women, do you want marriage? Do you want kids? Do you want to cohabitate? How do we split the bills? Are we splitting the bills? Is there a different percentage? And I think that as women, we have to kind of know what we want before we can, partner with someone. And so my response would be like, I don't think you've listened to me. And it hurts that we're having this conversation.
That is a very mature response. I'll get your advice on some other things on a later show because I need that kind of advice. Mrs. Tate, I want to ask your advice because I talked a bit about the relationship with my mother, and I just so love how you said, I came home and I was stressed out, and you saw yourself. My mom and I talk to her every day, so we're fine. There's a lot of wounds that I don't know that will heal, but they're in the past. So. We are close, but I still hold some of the pain that I experienced from childhood, and I'm just curious what advice you might offer to somebody middle-aged. We don't have our parents here forever. I have her for a finite amount of time. How to navigate challenging relationships and to give her more grace for what she went through and all the sacrifices that she made for my brother and me, how I can view her with more compassion.
Well, I really think, because you're not the only one in a situation like this, because my mother also left when we were very young. And in a way, it was like this for me, because when she was there, she was an alcoholic. And when you get older, I realized my mother had a disease. She had a disease, and maybe she also, I always remember her being very beautiful and people always commenting on her figure and her shape. And then, like I knew she was partying and doing all of these different things. And she also, it was only when she was drinking that her behavior was like out of control. Like one time she sent me to the store. I went to the store, and at the time we lived way out in Long Island.
Way out.
And the store was about a mile, and I bought the wrong thing home. She was drunk. She had a knife in her hand, and she threw it at me. It's something I'll never, ever forget. See, that's why I'm saying bad things that happen to me. Like, when you get old enough, when you're old, you're mature enough to make a decision about your life and about yourself. because I also came to realize the older I got, my mother had a serious problem, drinking, and that wasn't really her, because when she was sober, she was a different person. And before she died very young, probably because of the drinking, I was in my early 20s when I lost my mother. At least she got to see my younger daughter, Deidre, as babies. But we had a respect. I loved her and a respect. And even now on Mother's Day, I said it would really be nice if my mom was here. So you just need to, like,
see her
just
as a
stand
human.
up and be a big woman and just say, forget it. Try as best as you can and know that your mother, the things that you didn't like, that it really wasn't her. It was anything else. And try to forgive her for that. Just forgive her and really forget. And when these things come into your mind, you chase them away. You chase them away. Like I tell my grandson all the time, that because he was trying to be an actor at one time and things didn't, and then he was like, I said, you know what you need to do whenever you feel down or you broke up with your girlfriend, always keep a picture of 5 beautiful moments in your life that you can call up right on command, and it automatically makes you feel better. And also just put a smile on your face, because when you smile, there's endorphins that are released that will actually change your whole chemistry.
There is.
And to get you through the hard moments or hard times, or if you're afraid of something, you have to be in control, because nobody is going to make you feel better. You got to do it yourself. Yes.
Why don't we have Kleenex on this set? I'm about to do this. All right, Mandii, I have a question for you, because honestly, throughout this entire conversation, you've been saying, how you saw your mother struggle, you wouldn't be good at it. It's worry. It sounds like your hesitation to become a mother is out of fear. But I want to ask you, what if you could do it right? What if you had the means? And what if you felt like, you know what? I could be good at this. I could create another dope human being. Would that change your mind?
Now I have a shallow response to that.
Okay.
I actually had the gastric sleeve surgery and have lost 80 pounds. At my most, I was 5'1", 230 pounds.
Wow.
So now it's also the fear of going back to that. I live in fear. I've talked about this with my therapist. But the idea of my body going back to a place that really set me to being uncomfortable, I don't know how I could be the best person I am when I'm not happy in my body. And so a lot of what it takes to bear a child and carry one for 9 months and all of the ways your body changes in that.
Yeah.
That is another part of me really not wanting also to be a mom.
I've heard that.
Yeah. So it has a lot to do as well with just my physical, and women are strong as hell to be able to bring life in that way. But a lot of it does have to do with, the fear of what weight I won't be able to lose after.
And I have to push back on that a little bit. I don't think that's a shallow response.
Okay,
thank you. I think you deserve to feel good in your body and how you look. I do have another follow-up, though.
Oh.
What if the doctor says, and all this technology we have, the doctor said, boo, don't worry about that. We gonna get this baby, and we gonna snatch this extra weight that you gained out, same slice, you good. Would that change your mind?
I don't want to say fuck them kids, but I really am not a fan of kids.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm not going to lie. I'll be on the plane. I'll be like, why they got to talk? I go on vacation during the week when I know they're in school. I went to Bali one time and they was there. I said, now, why are you bringing kids to Bali?
Yeah.
I thought this was an adult. I really, honestly, again, I love my friends. I'm the youngest of all my friends. Maybe I don't even like people younger than me. You know what I mean? I really love my existence now as who I am, and I've been birthing businesses. I feel like, again, we were talking a little bit, knowing that you were this modern era woman back when, women were really just stay-at-home moms. I'm loving the freedom to do the things I want to do. And with all the fear, I also fear losing my freedom in being a mother.
Yeah.
And so, nope, girl, answer won't change.
I get it. But I have to say, Mandii, I think your responses are so centered and mature. The thing about telling the guy, you haven't been listening to me, if that's what you're saying. I respect where you stand. And I hope society does too, because you
Yes.
have that right. That's the beauty in our womanhood. And in Black liberation, really. We have
Yes.
a right to be and breathe and feel all the things. So I salute you in your honesty, and I thank you for
Thank you
having the
so much,
conversation
Tiffany.
with me. And Mrs. Tate, I'm adopting you. I want to take you
She
home with
adopting
me.
us.
Yes, exactly. You are such a wonderful spirit. And
I had a great time being here. I really did.
thank you. Will you come back?
Just all you have to do is ask.
Okay, good. I definitely want to have you back. Mandii, I'm kidnapping you, as you know. But really, truly, thank both you ladies for being here. And I have some final thoughts. Motherhood is a mental illness. Now, if you saw the film Hustler, you know that was a line said by Ramona, portrayed by Jennifer Lopez. But what I've discovered is it can make you mad with love, mad in the angry sense of the word, mad with self-sacrifice. And being childless can leave you self-full, as we heard with Mandii. And if not having kids is a choice, you reserve the right to change your mind. As for me, I will tell you, I have not spent a fraction of a second of regret. I am happy with my choice and the freedom it gives me. But I do want to say thank you to all the mothers for giving us life. Thank you to all the women who didn't, because your gifts to this world are not defined by procreation. And I do have to close because Mandii has caused all kind of problems with me and my mom after being such an amazing daughter. I would just close this show by thanking the Most High for choosing my own mother as my path to life. And I want to thank my mother for bringing me into the world and weathering all the heartache and heartbreak and the judgment and the snarky remarks from me, the irritation, the impatience. Thank you. Please speak to me after this episode. And to all the women who cannot or choose not to have children, we celebrate you as well. This is a safe space for us to make all the choices in freedom and love, as is our right, our birthright as Black women. So thank you for joining us for this edition of Across Generations.